Prologue. In the shadowed halls of Eldridge Citadel, where stone walls whispered of old glories and newer rot, the kingdom of Valoria teetered on a knife's edge. Supplies vanished into thin air, orders tangled like knotted ropes, and the royal guard, once the realm's proud shield, grew weary and thin under the weight of endless nights and broken promises. At the heart of it all stood King Alaric, young and untested, his court filled with glittering banquets while the barracks went hungry. Few dared speak against him. Fewer still believed he even noticed the cracks spreading through his realm. But in the eastern barracks, Second Commander Rhea did more than notice. She lived it. Tall and sharp-eyed, with a wolf's loyalty and a soldier's scars, she had risen through sweat and steel, mentored by a captain who saw promise in her blade, yet every missing spear and contradictory command chipped away at the world she had sworn to protect. Tonight, the weight of it all drove her to the flickering lights of the iron, tankard tavern on the edge of the lower ward. One drink to dull the frustration became 10. And in the warm, golden haze of too much mead, Lyra's tightly guarded tongue finally broke free. Little did she know, her words would reach the ears of the one man who could change everything, whether she wanted him to or not. In a kingdom fraying at the seams, one drunken challenge could topple a king, or bind a guard to him forever. What happens when the most powerful alpha in the land is dared to marry the woman who just called his rule a failure? Chapter 1. One could argue that if Rhea hadn't been so deep in her cups, she would never have challenged the Alpha King to marry her. Then again, if the king had governed his realm with greater care, she might never have needed that many drinks to begin with. So in the end, the whole mess was clearly his fault. As second in command of the Citadel Guard, Rhea was rarely one to drink heavily, and even less inclined to run her mouth. But after the 10th tankard, the dimly lit interior of the Silver Boar Tavern had taken on a warm, golden haze. Her usual restraint dissolved, and her personality shifted into something bolder, louder, and far more dangerous. I could run this entire citadel better than the king himself, she declared, swaying slightly on her chair like a banner in a strong wind. She brandished her tankard for emphasis. On his best day and my worst, the table erupted in laughter. Someone slammed their mug down, spilling ale across the scattered cards. To the captain we truly deserve, shouted Finn, the youngest in their group. The others raised their drinks in a roaring toast. I'm serious, Rhea insisted, setting her tankard down with exaggerated care. Give me 1 week with full authority, and I'd have this place sorted out properly. Sorted how? Asked Lyra, grinning as she dealt another hand. Where do I even begin? Rhea replied. She listed the endless frustrations, weapons requisitioned, but never delivered grain shipments for the eastern barracks, vanishing into thin air, and conflicting orders that left her and Captain Thorne untangling paperwork for days, Instead of actually guarding anything, supplies disappear. Orders contradict each other. Half the time we're fixing the king's neglect instead of protecting the realm. Sounds like rotten luck, Lyra commented, sliding another drink her way. It isn't luck, Rhea proclaimed, the liquor fully in control now. It's neglect. The man at the top hasn't the faintest idea what's happening under his own roof. He's too busy with grand banquets and noble flattery to notice the citadel rotting from within. Strong words. Came a dry voice from the seat beside her. Rhea turned. She hadn't noticed the stranger settle in. A man in a traveler's cloak, hood raised despite the tavern's warmth, an untouched cup of dark ale in his hand. Not strong. True, she shot back. A king ought to know what goes on in his own house. This one couldn't find the storehouse with both hands and a map. She caught the lower half of the stranger's face, the hint of a smile. The king is young, new to the throne, he replied calmly. Perhaps no one has told him that storehouses have a habit of growing legs. Then no one is doing their job, including him. Rhea jabbed a finger at the table. He's the king. Not knowing is the one thing he isn't allowed. You'd say that to his face? The stranger asked. Rhea thumped her tankard down. I'd say worse to his face. The table cheered. The approval went straight to her head. You think he's ever gone hungry because grain never arrived? Or told a soldier he must stand another 8 hours on the same cold stone? He doesn't know how the rest of us live, and he doesn't care to learn. A scatter of hear, hear rang out. Finn clapped loudly. Then the stranger reached up and pushed back his hood. Rhea's first thought, drunk, instant, and entirely traitorous, was, oh, that's not fair. Because the face beneath the hood was one she knew from coins, and the great hall portrait she passed daily on patrol. The painters had captured the wavy light brown hair and strong jaw, but they had missed the rest, the lazy, unhurried confidence, the sharp line of his throat, and those pale blue eyes that seemed far too perceptive. His mouth curved into a slow, devastating smile that could unravel even the most sensible woman. Rhea noted with vivid clarity that she wouldn't mind being kissed by that mouth at all. She was furious about it. Alaric, he said pleasantly, as if they were being introduced. King of Eldoria, and you are. The laughter died instantly. The tavern went silent, except for the ringing in Rhea's ears. Finn found his voice first. Your Majesty, he whispered, bowing. Somewhere beneath the wine, Rhea's wolf knew she should stop talking. The wine had other ideas. Huh, she said. You're shorter than the portraits. Am I? King Alaric asked, amused. I'll have the painters flogged. Rhea bit her tongue. So, you truly think I could learn something from you? He continued, voice light. I think you have no idea what it costs to do my job. If I were queen, I'd do a damned sight better than you, Rhea snapped, annoyed by how distracted she was by his smile. He raised an eyebrow and leaned in like a dare. If you were queen, my dear, we'd have to be married. Rhea thought with satisfaction that this was a test. He expected her to back down. He had chosen the wrong drunk guard. Then marry me, she thumped the table. Go on, I dare you. Marry me and see how the rest of us live. The tavern fell deathly silent. Alaric blinked. Rhea blinked back. For a moment, they simply stared at each other. Proud as anything, Rhea lifted her chin. So, what'll it be? Will you marry me? He opened his mouth to answer. The whole tavern leaned in. Rhea watched his lips part, the shape of the first word forming, and then the room tilted sideways. The floor and ceiling swapped places. Rhea passed out cold before she heard a single word. What happens when a bold guard drunkenly proposes to the king she just insulted in front of everyone? Will he laugh it off, or turn her entire world upside down? The morning after is coming, and Rhea is about to discover that some dares have consequences no amount of regret can undo. Don't miss what happens when the king himself comes knocking. Chapter 2. Rhea awoke with the unshakable belief that she had died sometime during the night, and this was her personal hell. Hell, it turned out, was far too bright, and her head throbbed like a war drum. At least she was back in her own bunk in the guards' quarters. Somehow, against all odds, she had made it home. Fragments of the previous night drifted back. The warm glow of the silver boar, laughter, cards, and a vague memory of a man with a low, amused voice and striking blue eyes. She shoved the pieces aside under the label "Too Much Ale." Never again. She's alive, a familiar voice announced. Rhea cracked one eye open. Lyra stood in the doorway, arms crossed. Behind her hovered Finn and a couple of other guards, all wearing expressions that made her stomach twist. Go away, Rhea croaked. Big night, huh? Finn offered carefully. Rhea rolled her eyes. Fine, I drank too much. It won't happen again. The admission stung. She was usually the responsible one, the one who stayed sharp and saw others home safely. She braced for the teasing, but no one laughed. Lyra and Finn exchanged a worried glance. What? Rhea demanded. Lyra grimaced. You really don't remember, do you? I remember enough to be ashamed, Rhea muttered. It's not that simple, Finn said, forcing a weak smile. But it'll be fine. He probably won't take a drunk guard's words seriously. Finn, Lyra cut him off sharply. Best case, he strips her of rank, Lyra added quietly. Rhea looked between them, confusion cutting through the hangover fog. What are you all talking about? Lyra crouched beside her bunk. I don't know how to say this gently, but you told the king he was shorter than his portraits. Rhea blinked slowly. The king. Yes, Lyra confirmed. King Alaric himself. You're saying I told his majesty he was too short. Rhea's voice rose. Among other things, Finn added. The memories slammed back into place. The hood sliding back. Those piercing blue eyes. The devastating smile. And worse, far worse, her own voice ringing out. Then marry me. She had proposed marriage to the Alpha King of Eldoria after insulting him to his face in a crowded tavern. And she had no idea how he had responded. "Rhea," came a sharp call from down the corridor. "Captain Thorne wants you now." Finn's hopeful expression faded. A summons from the captain in that tone meant trouble. Rhea dressed quickly, her stomach churning with dread the entire walk to Thorne's office. The king couldn't possibly let such public mockery slide. A ruler who allowed a common guard to challenge him openly invited chaos. Punishment was coming. The only question was how severe. She tried convincing herself the worst outcome was losing her position, but she couldn't believe it. He could have her head if he wished, and no one would protest. By the time she knocked on the captain's door, nausea gripped her. "Enter," Thorne called. She stepped inside, searching his face for any clue. Maybe he didn't know. Maybe the tavern gossip hadn't reached him yet. "Tell me the whole citadel has it wrong," Thorne said grimly. "Tell me you didn't ask the Alpha King to marry you in front of an entire tavern full of witnesses." Rhea closed her eyes. "Sir, I can explain." But there was nothing to explain, and they both knew it. Thorne, a man who had faced down riots without flinching, now looked openly worried. "What exactly did you say to him?" he asked. "Everything is a blur," Rhea admitted. But he didn't seem too angry. "He's the king," Thorne snapped. "He doesn't need to get angry. He can do whatever he wants. Gods help us. We need to prepare your defense." Rhea's throat tightened with shame. This was the man who had believed in her when no one else had. And she had repaid him by turning herself into the palace joke. Suddenly, the gate bell began ringing loudly. Thorne's head snapped up. "That's the main gate. An official arrival, and no one informed me." His frown deepened. Only one person could bypass the captain of the guard like that. They both realized it at the same moment. Footsteps echoed through the floor, unhurried, confident, approaching the office. One man, alone. The king wasn't coming. The king was already here. The king has arrived at the captain's office, and he's not here for punishment. Or is he? What game is King Alaric truly playing with the bold guard who dared propose to him? A private claim, a shocking declaration, and a bond that may not be what it seems. The stakes are rising fast. Turn to Chapter 3 to see how Rhea faces the king, who now calls her his fiancée. Chapter 3. The door swung open, and the Alpha King of Eldoria stepped into the modest gray office. The air in the room shifted instantly, growing heavier, charged with the unmistakable presence of a true alpha. Rhea felt her own wolf stir beneath her skin, snapping to full attention. She had known he was powerful, but the hooded stranger from the tavern had let her forget just how commanding he truly was. He filled the doorway with broad shoulders and unhurried grace. He was strikingly handsome, far more so than any portrait could capture. What she hadn't anticipated was the sheer weight of his authority, the the quiet certainty of a ruler who had never needed to raise his voice to command obedience. "Ah," King Alaric said, his pale blue eyes locking onto her with clear amusement. "There's my fiancé." Rhea froze where she stood. Fiancé. Her stomach plummeted. Captain Thorne recovered first. "Your Majesty," he said quickly, "forgive me. My guard was heavily intoxicated last night. I take full responsibility. Any discipline owed should fall on me, and it should be handled quietly." The king listened with his head slightly tilted, as if weighing not just the words, but the man speaking them. Then a slow smile spread across his face. "Discipline," he repeated, eyes widening in mock surprise. "Captain, I sincerely hope you don't intend to discipline my delicate bride yourself. I might take that quite personally." A heavy silence filled the small office. "Your Majesty," Thorne tried again, voice careful, "please don't jest. Rhea is a fine soldier." "Right, yes. And there will be discipline," Alaric cut in smoothly, his gaze shifting back to Rhea. "I'll be handling it personally once we're wed," he winked at her. Rhea's jaw dropped. "Your Majesty," Thorne pressed, visibly strained, "you can't seriously mean to marry her." The king placed a hand dramatically over his heart. "And why not? She asked me, and I said yes." He turned to Rhea with perfect innocence. "Didn't I, sweetheart?" The problem was, Rhea genuinely couldn't remember. You," her voice, steady through countless fights and dangers, failed her completely. "I said yes," Alaric repeated cheerfully, "right before you were sick all over my boots." The room seemed to spin. She did remember that part now. Heat flooded her face. "You vomited on the king," Thorne said faintly. "Don't fret, Captain," Alaric replied with a peaceful smile. "I found her even more charming because of it." Thorne dragged a hand down his face. "But why, Your Majesty? Why agree to marry her?" Alaric's expression turned earnest. "Well, Captain, you're a wolf. You understand how these things work." He spread his hands. "When a bond strikes, it strikes hard." Rhea startled. A bond. Impossible. She would have felt something, a pull, a connection. All she sensed was the overwhelming aura of a powerful alpha. He's lying, she thought with sudden certainty. There was no bond. He knew it. She knew it. Yet here he was, inventing one on the spot. "You're saying she's your mate?" Thorne asked, voice strained. "Of course she is," Alaric declared. "Otherwise, a loyal soldier of yours would never have dared propose to her sovereign in a public tavern after too much wine." Can you imagine the scandal, Captain? Rhea realized she had been expertly maneuvered. The mate-bond story was the only shield that turned last night's disaster from a hanging offense into something resembling fate. Deny it, and she was finished. Accept it, and the madness became destiny. Why was he doing this? Thorne nodded slowly, defeated. "As you say, Majesty," he straightened. "While you're here, may I have permission to increase the Citadel watch? The incident during the recent hunt still troubles me. An old strap and a skittish horse Alaric said lightly. Don't lose sleep over it, though feel free to strengthen the watch if it eases your mind. Thank you, Majesty. Now the king clapped his hands together. Might I have a moment alone with my betrothed? Thorn hesitated, but he had no real choice. He bowed and left. The door clicked shut, leaving Rhea alone with the king. A private dinner invitation, growing tension, and the first real test of whether this bond is real or merely a clever game. The king wants to see her world up close, but what will Rhea show him? Chapter 4. Dinner was arranged in a quiet private chamber off the main hall, its walls softened by tapestries and warm lantern light. Rhea sat waiting like a prisoner awaiting judgment, her simple pink gown feeling far too elegant for someone of her station. When King Alaric entered, his pale blue eyes found her immediately, and something in that gaze made her pulse jump. Well, my dear, he said smoothly, pink truly suits you. He studied her the way a strategist surveys a board he already controls. Rhea hated how her spine straightened under the weight of his attention. You mock me, Your Majesty. Now, why would I do that? He asked, lifting a decanter. Wine. The word alone made her grimace. Right, perhaps not, he continued without missing a beat. I'd rather not have you ill on me twice in 2 days. Your Majesty, she began, but he interrupted gently. It pains me to see you so uneasy, my darling. During the meal, he rolled up his sleeves, and Rhea found her gaze lingering on the corded strength of his forearms as he reached for his goblet. She caught herself and looked away. You've grown quiet, he observed. I'm eating, she replied. No, you're plotting, he said, leaning forward with a knowing smile. Go on. Tell me what you're thinking that I won't like. She hesitated only a moment. Why am I really here, Your Majesty? You can't possibly want to marry me. I'm a guard. I'm tall, plain, and... She stopped herself. She would not list everything she wasn't. For a heartbeat, he rested his chin on his hand, regarding her with an expression of wounded innocence. Why not you, Rhea? When the bond calls, it doesn't check a list of requirements. His voice had dropped, low and earnest, and the words settled warmly in her chest. It was a good answer. Too good. Believing it was exactly how clever people became fools. I'd feel it if we shared a true bond, she said firmly. I feel nothing of the sort. The king pouted. You feel nothing for me at all. I feel like I'm walking on broken glass, trying to figure out what you want from me. He was quiet for a long moment. You challenged me to come see how the rest of the kingdom truly lives, to understand real hardship. Perhaps that's what this is. And how exactly are you learning anything while sitting here being served pheasant? Rhea countered. Forgive me, but if you have the leisure to wine and dine whoever amuses you, then I doubt you understand true difficulty at all. Alaric sat back. She realized she had once again spoken far too freely to a king. I apologize, Your Majesty. You have every right to. You're right, he interrupted. She stared. I am. Yes, he set his napkin aside. I've never stood where you stand. So show me. Show me your side of things, and we'll discover whether it's truly as simple as I believe. The mischief had faded from his eyes. What remained was steady and direct. Rhea fidgeted, more moved than she wanted to admit. He was beautiful, yes, but it was this unexpected sincerity that undid her. Fine, she said, her voice softer than intended. She had planned to march him through the citadel like a formal inspection. But the moment they stepped into the armory, the familiar surroundings loosened something the fancy gown had kept tightly bound. 40 spears requisitioned, she explained, gesturing at the mostly empty racks. Only 12 delivered. The same with armor, boots, and lamp oil, every single month. Alaric ran his hand along the bare pegs, his frown deepening. Where does the rest go? That's the question, isn't it? She moved further down the line. The captain raises it, but the concerns die further up the chain. No one above us has ever truly cared how a barracks actually functions. She waited for empty royal promises. Instead, he said, "Show me the duty roster." She blinked. The what? The duty roster. You have one, yes. He held out his hand expectantly. You told me to see. I'm seeing. There was something almost boyish in his eagerness, like he had been handed an intriguing puzzle. Rhea retrieved the worn ledger and handed it over, watching as he flipped through the pages. When his thumb paused on a particular entry, she spoke before she could stop herself. No, there. The Eastern Gate doubling shift. He looked up. She realized she had stepped close enough that they were nearly shoulder to shoulder, both bent over the page. She cleared her throat and pointed. That's the real waist. 2 men where one would suffice, because the order was duplicated and never canceled. So cancel it, he said simply. I'm only second in command. I flag issues. I can't. You have the authority now. He straightened. Consider this your official royal permission to cancel any wasteful order. She stared at him. You can't possibly mean that. Of course I do. He reached past her for the ledger again, and the brush of his sleeve against her arm sent an unwelcome spark through her. He wasn't even looking at her. He was genuinely studying the roster. Something warm and dangerous stirred in her chest. As they crossed the darkened training yard later that night, Rhea heard it first, the soft scrape of stone on leather in the thick shadows beneath the buttresses. Problem? Alaric asked too loudly. Quiet, she whispered, eyes scanning the darkness. She knew every inch of this yard. Something was wrong. A shadow moved near the woodpile. You've gone tense, Alaric noted. Is this the part where you confess you find me irresistible? She yanked him sideways, just as a crossbow bolt whistled through the air where his head had been, burying itself in the wood with a sickening thud. Was I just shot at? He asked, sounding more curious than alarmed. Stay behind me, she ordered, shoving him toward the wall. Don't move. 4 figures emerged from the shadows, blades drawn, faces wrapped in dark cloth. Rhea tore the side of her gown for better movement and drew her sword. The fight was swift and brutal. She dispatched the first two with practiced efficiency. Alaric took down another who came at him. When the fourth charged the king, Rhea threw herself between them. The blade caught her forearm, but she twisted the attacker's wrist until it snapped. A sharp whistle pierced the night. The remaining assailants broke off in disciplined retreat. Silence returned. "Well," Alaric said, breathing steady, "you certainly know how to make an evening memorable." Rhea stared at him. "You're not even surprised. Someone just tried to kill you, and you're calm. This isn't the first time, is it?" For half a second, something raw flickered behind his eyes before he masked it. "You're bleeding. Let's tend to that arm." She didn't take his offered hand. "Who are you really?" she wondered. A king playing at being a fool, or something far more complicated? Days of watching and wanting blur together as attraction grows dangerous. But when the king's true intentions remain hidden, can Rhea trust the pull between them? Or is it all part of a larger game? Chapter 5. For the better part of a month, Rhea tried to unravel what secrets the king was keeping. It was the only logical response to a man who had laughed off an attempt on his life in the middle of the Citadel grounds. Someone wanted Alaric dead. She was certain of it. So she did what she did best. She watched, she gathered information, and she stayed alert. The engagement, she theorized, might be a convenient shield, a way to keep a trusted guard close without raising suspicion. Every day brought new theories, but the king refused to cooperate. Whenever she asked a pointed question, he answered with a joke or a flirtation, sliding the conversation away so smoothly she barely noticed, until they were on an entirely different topic. She would press him about the assassination attempt, and he would tell her she looked beautiful when she was suspicious. He gave her nothing solid to work with, yet offered plenty she didn't know how to handle, because the longer she observed him for threats, the more she simply found herself watching him. It crept up on her slowly, like a rising fever. One morning, he visited the weapon stores, leaning against the doorframe with lamplight tracing the strong line of his throat, and she lost her train of thought mid-sentence. "You stopped," he noted, smiling. She was not thinking. She was staring at his mouth. She caught herself and grew furious, but it only grew worse. He joined her on the eastern wall during a cold night watch, bringing 2 steaming cups of spiced cocoa. When his fingers brushed hers while handing her one, warmth shot up her entire arm. She nearly dropped the cup and covered it by glaring into the darkness. "You're not looking at the stars," he murmured, his voice low and intimate in the quiet night. It sent a shiver down her spine. "They're just stars," she managed. "They're shining rather brightly tonight." He was looking at her openly, taking his time. Rhea, who had faced armed enemies without flinching, could not hold his gaze for long. He smiled into his cup like a man who had won a quiet victory and said nothing, letting her stew. That was the worst part. She could never tell how much was genuine and how much was him toying with her. She didn't know which version of him she was falling for, but late at night, in her narrow bunk, with her body restless and sleep far away, her thoughts went straight to him. She imagined his hands. She imagined far more than his hands. Alone in the dark, her breathing shallow. It all came to a head one evening in the armory. He entered and sat on the bench across from her, as if he belonged there. No papers, no official questions, just him, watching her in the lamplight. "What do you want?" she snapped. The words came out raw. "I'm at my limit." Her hands were unsteady. "Every day you refuse to say what you're really after, yet you won't leave me alone. I can't keep doing this." Her voice cracked. "Tell me it's a scheme. Tell me you need a sword you can trust. Tell me anything that makes sense, because I'm not built to want things I can't have. And you're making me want." She stopped too late. "Want what?" Alaric asked, his voice low, no longer teasing. "Don't," she sighed. "You know what? You've known for days. You've been enjoying it." He stood and came around the bench slowly, the way one approaches something that might flee. "What if I simply want you?" he asked. He was close now, close enough that she had to tilt her head to meet his eyes. "Men like you don't want women like me," she whispered, staring at his mouth again. "You don't believe me," he said softly. "So tell me to stop, and I'll leave right now. I'll walk out and never trouble you again." His voice dropped to almost nothing. "Or ask me to prove it." The armory was silent, except for her pounding pulse. "Prove it," she heard herself say. He kissed her. Every careful thought in Rhea's mind went blank. His hand slid into her hair, his mouth warm, certain, and devastatingly thorough. There was no audience, only the two of them, the soft lamplight, and the overwhelming reality of him. She made a small sound against his lips. She would have been embarrassed by if she could think at all. Then her senses caught up, and his scent hit her, raw, unmistakable desire rolling off him in a hot wave. It nearly buckled her knees. Rhea had been wanted for her skill with a blade, for her reliability on watch. Never like this, never with plain, helpless want aimed directly at her. She let her hands explore under the edge of his shirt, palms flat against the hard planes of his stomach. The rough groan he made against her mouth pulled low in her belly. She fisted his collar and kissed him back fiercely, the way she had imagined for weeks. His hand spanned her waist, then slid to her back, pressing her against the full length of his body. She felt exactly how much he wanted her and trembled. His tongue met hers, and heat flooded through her, making her dig her fingers into his shoulders to stay upright. "Rhea," he rasped, voice ragged. She pulled back just enough to meet his darkened eyes. "I'm sure," she said. His hands found the laces of her tunic. Hers found his shirt. Fabric whispered to the floor. She pressed her palms to his chest, feeling the rapid beat of his heart, and he made a sound like she had wounded him. He grabbed her hips and lifted her. Her back met the wall, her legs wrapped around his waist, and there was nothing but his heat, his hands, and the sweet, devastating ache finally easing between them. This was no scheme. This was no strategy. This was a man who wanted her, and God's help her, she wanted him just as badly. A glittering ball, a poisoned cup, and the first true crack in the mate bond. Trust is about to be tested like never before. Continue to Chapter 6. Chapter 6. Rhea had stood guard at countless royal gatherings, but she had never attended one as a guest. Now, she moved through the grand ballroom in a flowing gown of deep emerald silk that caught the light with every step, feeling entirely exposed. Across the room, King Alaric caught her eye and gave her a slow, private smile, the same one he had worn that morning when she slipped from his bed at first light. The tightness in her chest eased a fraction. "You look devastating," he had murmured against her skin earlier, voice still rough with sleep. "I look like I'm playing dress-up," she had replied. "You look like you're mine," he answered, eyes warm. "And I'm the luckiest man in the realm." Heat rose in her cheeks. Flattery. "Truth," he said, tucking her hand into the crook of his arm. "Come, let me show you off so the entire court can see what I get to keep." He guided her through the crowd with effortless authority. Rhea allowed herself to lean into the steady warmth of his palm against her back. He led her out onto a wide stone terrace where the music softened, and cool night air drifted up from the moonlit gardens below. For a moment, they stood in comfortable silence. "You hate this," she observed, watching him. He glanced at the dancers visible through the archway. "Hate is a strong word. You're lying." She knew him well enough now, the shape of his laughter against her throat, the way he whispered her name in the dark. He laughed, surprised and genuine, then turned to face her fully. The charming mask slipped away, revealing exhaustion underneath. "I've been doing this since I was 19, he admitted quietly. The smiling, the performance, being exactly what everyone needs so they don't look too closely at what I'm not. He shook his head. "I can't decide if that makes me clever, or simply what?" she pressed. "Nothing, ignore me. I've had too much wine." His smile returned, thin and brittle. She reached up and touched his face. His breath caught. The false smile crumbled. "You're not what they think you are," she said softly. "You're so much more than the performance. And the man underneath, I like him. A lot." Something raw cracked open in his eyes. "Rhea." His voice was rough. He pulled her into a fierce kiss, grateful, desperate, full of everything he couldn't say. She leaned into him, and the world shifted. It wasn't just heat or desire. A rush of foreign emotions flooded through her, relief, fear, fierce tenderness. Emotions that weren't hers. Rhea jerked back with a gasp. Alaric's eyes were wide, pupils blown. "Did you?" Her heart hammered. He stepped closer, desperate need clear on his face. It was just a kiss, she heard herself say quickly. A kiss, he repeated. His expression shuddered, hurt flickering across it. Right, probably nothing. A servant appeared at the edge of the terrace, carrying a silver tray with 2 cups of dark wine. Your Majesty. Alaric reached for a cup. Rhea's wolf surged with warning. Without thinking, she knocked the cup from his hand. It shattered on the stone. Don't, she gripped his wrist hard. Don't touch it. She crouched beside the spilled wine. Beneath the rich scent lingered something bitter and wrong. Nightshade, she whispered, or something close. It was meant to incapacitate you, or worse. Color drained from Alaric's face. This was the 3rd attempt in a month, she said, voice tight. You're in danger. I can't protect you if you won't let me. Rhea, he said, covering her hand with his. You will tell no one, not the captain, not the watch. No one, do you understand? She pulled free. No, I don't. We have a visiting monarch and his court here. If word spreads that someone tried to poison you in your own home, we'll have war by morning. Exactly, he said simply. So I smile, I dance, and I handle this my way. She wanted to shake him. Alaric, this is serious. He closed the distance and pulled her against his chest. Hey, I'm here. I'm fine. You saved me. His voice softened against her temple. I need you to trust me on this. Can you do that? Every instinct screamed no. But she could still feel the echo of his emotions through that brief bond flare. All right, she whispered. I promise. Relief washed over his face. He kissed her forehead, then stepped back. The king's mask slid perfectly into place once more, charming, confident, in control. I'll be back soon. Wait for me. She nodded. He kissed her again and returned to the ballroom. Rhea gave him a 30-count head start, then followed. She moved along the edges as she had been trained, watching him deflect questions with practiced ease. The moment he slipped through a side door, the smile vanished from his face. Her stomach dropped. She trailed him down a narrow staircase toward Captain Thorne's office. The door clicked shut behind him. Rhea stood in the darkened corridor for a long moment, then quietly opened the door. Alaric stood behind Thorne's desk, drawers open, papers in hand. What are you doing? She demanded. He looked up sharply. For once, the king had no immediate answer. Rhea, he said, voice dangerously calm. This isn't what it looks like. A devastating confession about betrayal from within the guard, shattered trust, and a choice that could tear the kingdom apart. Chapter 7. Alaric didn't hesitate the way he usually did. He always had an answer ready before the question fully left someone's lips. But now, standing behind Captain Thorne's desk with a sheaf of documents in his hand, he paused. Rhea, he said, voice steady but careful. This isn't what it looks like. She stood in the doorway, heart hammering. Someone just tried to poison you tonight. You told me to stay silent. And now I find you searching through my captain's private papers in the dark. So tell me, Alaric, what is going on? Every instinct screamed danger, yet she still offered him an opening. Because only hours ago she had woken in his arms, warm and safe, and she desperately didn't want this to be the betrayal it appeared to be. He set the papers down slowly. I've been investigating Captain Thorne. The words didn't make sense at first. They were just sounds. Thorne, he continued, gentle and terribly calm, the tone he used with nervous nobles. Embezzlement, sabotage, the missing supplies, the contradictory orders, all of it deliberate. He's been diverting funds meant for the guard into House Varac's coffers. And I believe the men who have tried to kill me have been paid with his coin. The floor seemed to vanish beneath her feet. No, she whispered. She stepped back as he moved around the desk toward her. Thorne wouldn't. You don't know him like I do. He's not. But beneath the denial, something cold and logical began piecing itself together. You needed someone close to him, she said, voice hollow. Someone he trusted. That's why you agreed to the engagement that night in the tavern. A drunk fool stood up and handed you the perfect way in. He didn't deny it. He simply held her gaze. Say I'm wrong, she begged, voice cracking. Alaric, tell me I'm wrong. He looked at her for a long moment, searching for words. When none came that could fix this, she pressed her hands to her face. She had been so foolish. All his questions about the rosters, the stores, who held the keys when Thorne was absent, she had thought he was genuinely interested in learning. Instead, he had been gathering evidence. Using her. All of it, she whispered. It was all a lie. Not all of it, he said, stepping closer. She retreated into the corridor. He stopped immediately. Rhea, please listen. The engagement began as cover, yes, but it stopped being that weeks ago. The moment Why didn't you just ask me? She interrupted. If you suspected him, why not bring him in? You're the king. Being king doesn't make me untouchable, he replied with a sigh. Thorne controls much of the guard. He has an old respected name, powerful allies, and the loyalty of soldiers across the city. Arresting him on suspicion alone could have sparked open rebellion by sunrise. I needed proof no one could dispute. I couldn't risk becoming the tyrant everyone already expects me to be. It was a solid, reasonable answer. That made it hurt even more. You're wrong about him, she snapped. He picked up the papers again and held them out. Read them yourself. He's been bleeding the guard dry. The same men you stood on a table and defended that night. She refused to look. Thorne had pulled her from nothing and shaped her into someone who could stand tall. He was the one constant truth in her life. Not everyone is like you, she said, tears spilling over. Some people are exactly what they seem. She pushed forward. Is that why you never told me? Because you thought I was part of it with him? No, his hand reached out, then dropped. Gods, Rhea. If anything, you were the one person I cleared from the start. You were drunk that night, Drunk people don't scheme, they speak truth, and the truth you spoke on that table was that every problem in this kingdom was my fault. His mouth twisted. Half my court believes it. None of them would ever say it to my face. But you did. That's how I knew you weren't involved. He took another careful step closer. Was that truly your own conclusion? Or had the good captain been feeding you those grievances for years? The realization hit like cold water. She could hear Thorne's voice echoing across countless late nights, complaining about the king's banquets while supplies vanished, saying the ruler was blind to the suffering below. She had repeated those words as her own, without ever questioning them. You should have told me, she said, shaking. You knew I was innocent. I stood between you and a blade. I bled for you. I let you into my bed. And through all of it, you never trusted me with the truth. Why, Alaric? He met her eyes, and when the answer came, it was barely a whisper. Because I didn't think you'd believe me. I didn't think you'd choose me over the captain. And I was right, wasn't I? The truth of it stung like a slap. She stepped back until her spine hit the wall. Men like you don't see women like me as anything but useful. And you let me believe I was wrong about that. It is wrong, Rhea. He reached for her face, fingers curving gently. Don't. She jerked away. Don't say that. Not when the only reason you're saying any of it now is because I walked through the wrong door at the wrong time. For a long, painful moment, neither moved. His face was open, stricken. She turned toward the corridor. Rhea, his voice cracked. Please. There's a poisoner loose in the citadel and a foreign delegation downstairs. I need you. Even now, with her heart in pieces, it was I need you. Not I'm sorry. Not I can't lose you. Good night, Your Majesty, she said coldly, and walked out into the shadows, with trust shattered, and a traitor still hiding in plain sight. Can Rhea separate duty from a broken heart before it's too late for the kingdom? Chapter 8. It was all a lie. Rhea pressed the heels of her hands against her eyes until she saw sparks. Gods, how could I have been so blind? Rhea. Captain Thorne's voice cut through the dim corridor like a blade. He stood 10 paces away, as if he had been waiting for her. Before she could think better of it, she moved toward him. This was the man who had lifted her from the streets at 13 and forged her into someone strong. Right now, she felt anything but steady. Rhea, he said again, gripping her shoulders. What happened? You look like you've seen a ghost. The pain was too sharp to contain. She told him everything in a broken rush. How the king had used her. How none of it had been real. Thorne's expression softened with understanding. I know, he said gently. I hoped to spare you this pain. I'm sorry. She thought he must have suspected from the beginning. Everyone else had probably known too. Everyone except her. I'm sorry, Thorne continued, voice low. But it's worse than you realize. The visiting king's daughter, Alaric, has been pursuing her. Rhea's head snapped up. And she wasn't willing, Thorne added, jaw tight. He drugged her. I saw it myself not long ago. He compromised her so her father would have no choice but to seal the alliance. The words didn't fit. Rhea knew Alaric's scent, his honor, the way he had touched her. He would never do something so vile. The timeline was wrong too. An hour ago he had been with her on the terrace. Thorn was lying to her face. Her hand twitched instinctively toward her sword, but she held back. She was one woman against the captain who commanded the entire guard. She needed to be smart. "What do we do?" she asked, letting her face crumple with feigned despair. Thorn's eyes sharpened. "We go to the foreign king before Alaric can twist the story. A ruler who would drug an innocent princess isn't fit to sit the throne. There are strong houses ready to stabilize the realm afterward. House Varak among them." Rhea forced herself to nod. "But it can't come from me," Thorn continued. "I'm just a captain. They'll accuse me of reaching for power. It must come from someone they'll trust." His voice grew soft, almost kind. "It has to come from you, the king's own intended. If you tell the foreign king you witnessed Alaric with his daughter, no one will doubt you." The walk to the council chamber in the east wing felt endless. Rhea had nothing but her word and a desperate plan. One mistake could ignite war. The foreign king was meeting with Alaric and his advisors when they entered. Alaric looked up, and for a split second, his face brightened at the sight of her. Then he saw Thorn beside her, and the light died. "Your Majesty," Thorn bowed deeply. "It grieves me to bring this, but your daughter has been wronged by the man at your side." He laid out the accusation, the drugging, the ruined reputation bought for a political alliance. "That's a lie," Alaric said flatly. "Every word." Of course he'd say that, Thorn countered smoothly. But the king's own betrothed was there. He turned toward Rhea. The entire room followed his gaze. "Rhea, tell his Majesty what you saw." Every face turned to her, the foreign king leaning forward desperately. The advisors, Thorn confident she would deliver the killing blow. And Alaric, who clearly believed she had come to bury him. She looked at Alaric. "I'm sorry," she told him silently. "I should have believed you." Then she faced the foreign king. "I saw nothing of the sort," she said clearly, "because it never happened. Captain Thorn is lying to you." The room went taut as a drawn bowstring. Thorn went rigid. "She says it happened within the hour," Rhea continued. "But an hour ago the king was at the ball with me. He never approached the princess." She met the foreign king's eyes directly. "There have been 3 attempts on King Alaric's life recently. Tonight, someone put poison in his wine. I knocked the cup from his hand myself. Search the captain's quarters now, while he stands here and cannot interfere. See if you find evidence of a wronged princess, or payment ledgers, and the same poison that nearly killed your host." "This is hysteria," Thorn snapped, his calm fracturing. "She's distraught." "A search costs you nothing," the foreign king said quietly. He nodded to his guards. Thorn's face transformed from honest captain to cornered animal. He lunged at her, a knife sliding from his sleeve. Rhea, Alaric's voice rang out, raw with terror. But this was the one thing Rhea knew how to do better than anyone. She turned into the attack, caught his knife arm, wrenched it, and used his momentum to slam him face down onto the stone floor. Her knee pinned him between the shoulders. "You trained me," she hissed close to his ear. "You should have remembered what I'm capable of." The foreign king's guards swarmed in and hauled Thorn away. The visiting monarch went first to check on his daughter, safe and untouched. The advisors scattered in urgent whispers. Then it was just Rhea and Alaric left in the chamber. He hadn't moved. He stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. "You saved my life," he said hoarsely. "Even after everything, you still—" "I came to stop a traitor," Rhea said flatly. "That's all." The hope in his face flickered and dimmed. "Rhea, the bond. It's real. You felt it tonight." "It doesn't matter if it's real," she replied coldly. "I saved you because it was my duty, and because Thorn betrayed everything I believed in. Not 1 second of it was forgiveness. You used me, Alaric." His face fell. "Rhea, I love you. I don't care how it started. That doesn't change what we became. You're the truest thing I've ever—" "Don't," she stepped back. "You looked me in the eye for weeks and used me. A bond doesn't erase that." He flinched. "I'm sorry, I don't want your apology." She turned toward the door. "I'm glad you're alive. You'll be a good king. But I can't trust you anymore. I don't know if I ever will again." She saw the exact moment the realization hit him, that he had broken something precious that might never heal. "Rhea, please, I'll do anything. I'll—" She walked out without looking back. A traitor defeated, and a kingdom saved, but at what cost to 2 hearts? Can love survive when trust has been shattered beyond repair? Chapter 9. She had served as captain of the Citadel Guard for 6 months now, and she was damn good at it. Rhea had always known she would be. The entire palace felt different, cleaner, sharper, more honest. Captain Thorn sat in a cold cell beneath the old fortress. The corruption he had planted over years finally ripped out at the root. King Alaric had overseen the purge himself, and the people of the city were beginning to trust him for it. He had promoted her to captain. He had also spent the last 5 of those 6 months trying everything to win her back. The flowers started arriving around the 1-month mark. She returned from a dawn patrol to find the entire training yard overflowing with them. Her guards stood around grinning like fools, waiting to see her reaction. "Send them to the infirmary and the temple," she ordered curtly. Next came the council chamber. Twice a week she stood at the war table, and he was always there across from her. He would catch her eye with a look full of quiet hope, and she would drop her gaze back to the troop movements. Afterward, he would linger by the door. "Captain," he'd say softly, "might I have a word?" She always walked away. The mate bond didn't make it easier. If left open, it only grew stronger. So she kept it tightly closed and hoped it would eventually wither. Still, the letters came 2 or 3 each week, written in his own hand. Some were brief. Some stretched for pages. Some weren't even about her. Matters of postings, pensions, small kingdom matters, as if her honest opinion still mattered to him. One simply repeated sorry in 100 different ways. Another read, you were right. I was close enough to take you to my bed, but not close enough to tell you the truth. I spent your trust instead of earning it. It was the worst mistake of my life. And near the end of one long letter, I don't want you back because you're useful. I want you back because none of this means anything without you. Lyra and Finn always had opinions. Good, Lyra said in the early weeks. Make him suffer. You owe him nothing. A month or 2 later, the tone shifted. He fixed the back pay for the entire guard, Finn noted one evening. And he's written you, what, 40 letters? 43, Lyra corrected. By the 5th month, they dropped all pretense. Captain, Lyra said respectfully, talk to the man. You're both miserable, and the rest of us are tired of watching it. Rhea set down her pen. I was used. I'm not lining up for another round. I'm a good captain. The guard runs smoothly. I'd like to be left in peace to do my job. Then one night in the 6th month, a different letter arrived. Rhea, I'm sorry. You deserved better. You've made your wishes clear, and I will respect them. I'll stop now. She read it twice. This was what she had wanted. So why did it feel like a defeat? He kept his word. No more flowers. No more letters. When they passed in the corridors, he offered a polite nod. Captain, even, respectful, distant. This is what you wanted, she told herself. For the first week, she threw herself into her duties. She performed them well. But every night, the warm thread of the bond beneath her ribs refused to fade. Then came the knock. Finn burst into her office, Lyra right behind him. Both looked pale. What? Rhea asked slowly. He's gone, Lyra said. The king left the grounds. No one has seen him since the 10th bell. Rhea was on her feet before she realized it. When was he last seen? Where was he going? She was already buckling on her sword belt. Wake the trackers. Quietly. Get his scent from his chambers and every gate. No alarms. We don't need panic. She pressed a hand over her heart, over the bond she had tried to smother for half a year. Duty, she told herself. He's the king. Finding him is my job. It was more than duty. She opened the bond. It crashed into her like a storm, deep, bone-weary sadness that mirrored her own. Anger turned inward, despair. And underneath it all, a hazy confusion. He had been drugged, or was simply very, very drunk. She was running before she finished processing it. The bond pulled her through the lower city into narrow streets, barely touched by pre-dawn light. It led her to a modest tavern with warm light spilling from the windows. She kicked the door open low and ready, hand on her hilt, and stopped short. There was the king, slumped across the far end of the bar, collar undone, hair a wild mess, one hand loosely wrapped around an empty cup. He was talking earnestly to a very uncomfortable-looking barkeep. Lyra arrived panting behind her. Is he? Rhea took in the way he gripped the bar to stay upright, the way he swayed when he gestured. Dear gods, Lyra breathed. He's completely drunk. Relief flooded Rhea first, bright and overwhelming, because he was alive and safe. Then came the fury. She marched over and plucked the cup from his hand. I was drinking that, Alaric slurred. Then his eyes focused on her face and lit up with pure, unguarded delight. Rhea, he breathed. Through the open bond, she felt the rush of joy and relief hit him all at once. What were you thinking? She hissed. Disappearing like that with no guard, no word. Relax, he waved vaguely. I'll be back before anyone notices. The entire guard has noticed, she snapped. He swayed. Oh. Come on. She hauled him upright. He stumbled into her, warm and heavy, carrying the scent she had tried so hard to forget. Yes, he mumbled into her shoulder. I've noticed you're very angry with me. You'll never forgive me. I betrayed you. She pulled back slightly. I didn't know you then. He looked at her blearily. And then I did know you, and I loved you, and I was terrified of losing you. The honesty poured through the bond, frustration, sorrow, fear, all raw and unguarded. I knew you'd be angry, he continued. You were so sure a man like me couldn't truly want you, but I enjoyed courting you. Very much. The sincerity sat there, plain and unadorned. But the captain had you convinced you were only good for serving his guard, he sighed. And you still believe it a little, don't you? That struck deeper than she wanted. That doesn't change the fact that you should have told me, she said. Yes, he nodded. I was a coward. Then he added, just like you're being a coward now. What? You'd rather strangle our bond, a true connection between our souls, than risk being hurt again. His finger wobbled as he pointed. You are a coward. I am not a coward, Rhea snapped. Prove it. His eyes were half closed. Marry me, I dare you. The world seemed to stop. What did you just say? Marry me, he repeated, trying for dignity, and landing somewhere near desperate. Please. The bravado fell away, leaving raw vulnerability. I'm a wreck without you. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I swear it. The love, the longing, the pain of missing her poured through the bond with no mask, no strategy, just him. I won't ask again, he mumbled, eyes sliding shut. I said I'd stop. I'll stop. I'll leave you alone. Ask me again when you're sober, she said softly. Ask me again tomorrow, when you can remember asking. His eyes cracked open, and you'll say yes. She opened her mouth, then closed it as the king of Eldoria passed out against her shoulder, head lolling against her neck, breath warm with liquor. Rhea stood there holding him and smiled for the first time in 6 months. She pressed a gentle kiss to his forehead. Ask me tomorrow, she whispered, and find out. The wedding, the vows, and the hard one happy ending. Epilogue. It took him 4 long months. 4 months of asking her every single day, sober, earnest, and in more creative ways than any king probably should attempt. He asked across the war table until Lyra threatened to resign in an official letter. He asked on the eastern ramparts while spiced cocoa went cold in their hands. He asked with quiet sincerity, and once with so many blossoms that the entire barracks smelled like a festival for days. And every single day, Rhea told him to ask again tomorrow, until one perfectly ordinary morning, as they sat across from each other at breakfast in a sunlit chamber, she looked at the man watching her with that familiar, hopeful grin, and finally said, yes. The whole city turned out for the ceremony. The young king many had once dismissed, and the steadfast guard captain who had seen the real man behind the crown long before anyone else bothered to look. Alaric cried during the vows. She had known he would. She nearly did too, though she fought it. The bond betrayed her anyway, flooding with warmth and overwhelming emotion. He laughed through his tears, and she stopped caring who saw. You're stuck with me now, he murmured once the rites were complete, voice thick. No taking it back. Why would I take it back? Rhea replied, a smile tugging at her lips. I'm the one who proposed to you first, if you recall, drunk on a tavern chair. Best decision you ever made, Alaric concluded. She kissed him then, and for once she didn't argue. The end. Thanks for listening to this tale of love, betrayal, and hard-won redemption. If you enjoyed Rhea and Alaric's story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Nightbond Narratives for more passionate fantasy romances with alpha kings, fierce heroines, and fated bonds. Drop a comment below. At what point did you forgive Alaric? Was it during his confession in the office, the raw tavern scene, or are you still Team Rhea making him grovel longer? Be honest. I read every comment. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new release. Want more? Check out the full playlist of Nightbond Narratives for your next emotional roller coaster. Thank you for being part of the Nightbond family. Much love, and I'll see you in the next story.